like here, at least. So who have heard about a thing which is called developer experience? Who feels comfortable explaining us what is developer experience? So if whatever product you're creating, if you are creating a product which is for non-developers and you offer any development tools for developers to build with, you also offer the product for developers. And once they start building on your product, that's exactly the big black dot there where they start using. And from this moment, they become a user/developer. But before this, before they start using the development docs, they don't just jump into the docs right away. They do a loop on which they always go through some considerations and evaluation, and especially if there are several projects on the market with the same product with a very close SDK, then they will start thinking like, what SDK is better? And they first evaluate, and then they only start developing and using actually. And only the second loop is the user experience. So we don't talk about docs itself today. We are going to talk about what will happen on your website. And the website as an asset is on the journey of consideration and evaluation of which SDK to choose. When we talk about the website design, we always think in 3 layers. And the first layer is information architecture. On this layer, imagine if the website was a city. On this layer, you think about what buildings you are going to place across the city, what type of buildings, and how they're positioned. So do you have universities? Do you have schools? How many factories do you have? Maybe you don't have factories, maybe you have a zoo. The second layer is user flows. In general, both of them relate to user experience, so we don't call them at this presentation user experience, both of them are. But on the moment of the user flows, you you try to navigate the particular type of the visitor or habitat of this city into the line or the flow, how they visit one building to another building to another building, so their day life or their journey is completed. And the second level is visual style and UI and vibe. That's where branding lives, and that's where you define if it's a city, it's a Bauhaus city, or is it a solarpunk city, or is it underground? And all of them may have the same structure in terms of information architecture, but they just will look differently. When I go and run through the structure of the page, this will be like a navigation and indication on the top corner. So please pay attention on the top left corner. First, information architecture. What information blocks do you need? And you discover it through the user experience research and customer audience interviews. So first, you want to talk to people who have been working with SDK, so you know what works, what doesn't work, what they're looking for, what they need. And the second is audience interviews. Every time, every company at some point of their conversation, this kind of building, they will sit together and talk about who we are building for. And within this workshop, you will identify core audiences. That's a very easy case. Usually, the case is more complicated, where you have segmentation of the audiences. Let's say if you have partners, but you have business partners and academic partners. So although you work with them in the same way and they expect the same thing from you when it comes to collaboration, their ultimate goals are so different. The ultimate goals is pretty different for business people and for academic people. Mostly developers will fall into the main audience, and that's why a lot of information on the website is actually for developers, so you need to interview them separately. All of those audiences will go through the different types of onboarding journey before they start using. So before users will start using product, they will check like a website, an event page, some newsletters, whatever. Developers may go to the event, to the hackathon, and only after the hackathon they actually got to the real product, which is dev documentation. And when, regardless to like what type of audience, when you interview, you ask the set of questions. They usually grouped in these categories. So these are not questions, these are just categories. And after you collect the data and you form the data in something more readable, where you can spot the, how I call the UX gold. So in this UX gold, you actually see where is the green dots is the raw data, that's the gold, and that helps you to form the structure of what they will need to know and what they're looking for on top of what you want to tell, because the amount of what you tell is always a lot. And then when you have this data, you start playing already on two levels, information architecture and user flows. When you see, okay, if they have this doubt, we will put this block information here, and the following question to this question is another one. So how we structure all the blocks, and we keep them in the same learning journey until they know everything and they're ready to go. So let's create a self-initiated project like DappCon SDK. Definitely DappCon SDK cannot have NTK, why for? So let's call it Radial SDK because we are in the building of Radial system. Because it's self-initiated projects, let's go wild typography, apply some branding, off we go. So first structure, title, intro, button, nothing special. 3 common mistakes are done at this step is that too much text on the introduction, because everyone thinks we read a lot of text on the web pages, not. The second mistake is adding second CTA to go to docs. Like most common is join the community. You need to remember that this page is mostly for the first time, second time visitors, and joining the community at this first fold, it's too early. They first need to understand that they're here not for joining the community, but they're here to learn about your SDK. So you can use the CTA somewhere to the bottom. And the last mistake that doesn't actually very much hurt, but it's a mistake, it's when people add unnecessary copy, like for developers, by developers, or vice versa. It's like, it's SDK, and when it's like one multiple, when you have it so many times on the website, then with such copy, the website becomes like a Christmas tree of copywriting. What you can do instead is to use a very sharp line. Since no one is going to read it, this will work only for SEO, and it's good if you will rephrase it, the main purpose of the product, but for developers, of course, if it applies on SDK. And what is super important is to put the supported platforms languages right away on the top, because that's a constraint, and sometimes it's good to know at the very beginning, so you save time for visitors. The next section is feature section. So at this section, there is something that you want to tell. It's like possibilities of your SDK, and something that they need to achieve, which is to gain some benefits. And the point 1, point 3 are interconnected. So you need to know like, what are the possibilities, and then you can rephrase through several copywriting exercises. They're just like copyright. How to rephrase possibilities into benefits. The second one, in case you have a few alternatives of the market and there are a few alternatives offering SDKs, so it's good to highlight what's special for yours and how yours is better. And usually it will look like feature image, feature image, feature image. You will have 5, sometimes 7, and some of them will be very specific. So you can link buttons from these features to the particular place in the documentation, and that will be totally logical. But then there might be like 2, 3 features will not have specific. They are like more overall. And it's very tempting to just put a button, because we're in the flow of putting buttons everywhere, and go to docs. Which is a mistake, because it creates something which is called CTA clustering, and in general it lowers the effectiveness of the page in general. So what you can do instead is to group them into non-clickable, just informative features, and if they are very important features, just put them on the top of those that are clickable and bring you to the particular parts of the documentation. The next section is setup or get started. So get started has first like setup, big one, should be super visible, usually big because you can have setups for different environments. And then learning journey from the beginner to the most advanced. And all of them obviously will bring you to documentation, but not to the overview, but exactly to the point. Like if it's beginner tutorial, this first beginner tutorial. If it's sample, then it's first sample of the flow. Then sample projects are most important. So if you want to invest into something, it's better not to invest in video tutorials or something, but rather to sample projects. And well, if there is someone who is maintaining your page often, and if your page is working like a promotional, which is actually it is, then it's good. This is a place where you can put the upcoming hackathon guide, some video, or the video from the workshop from the hackathon. So then it creates the learning section, which is very solid. The next section is dApps built with Radial SDK. So usually people do what? Logo, 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 logo. Another case, we just big image with some logos and thousands of apps are using our SDK. Start building, and again, link to the docs. So that will work only if you have a particular link to the app marketplace powered with your documentation. If not, that's a moment where it's better to like over-deliver a little bit and try to find who's actually using and give them a links so people can see that it's actually a real project, and also what it will give you, that mostly that will be smaller projects, like smaller than you, building with your documentation, so they will be very proud to be on your page, and they also will have some reason to share your SDK page with someone else, and it's like marketing symbiosis. What's left? There we have advanced resources, frequently asked questions, dev forums, dev chat, and dev newsletter. Advanced resources like white papers, guide can stay on this page, they're relevant. Frequently asked questions can go to docs because mostly questions will pop up there. Dev forums, dev chat, it's just links to Discord and forum. And then dev newsletter, that's a very common mistake I see in the space. Join our community, which is sign up to the newsletter. That's a job for the copywriter, but when you're signing up to the newsletter, you're not joining community. So first, be very clear in the copy. And the second, if you have a product which is for non-technical users and you do a lot of marketing for like outreach, email outreach, for non-technical people, try to separate dev newsletter and non-technical newsletter. That is the best case. Or if your product is primary for developers, then it's good to have a little different copy and just explaining that there are sometimes dev updates. The structure, first advanced resources, frequently asked questions, get support, newsletter separately because it doesn't relate to the learning about the current state. And, well, because we can, that's the best place to place careers and dev grants in this section. The end of the page. To sum up, that's the whole structure. That's not very big. It will make it work a little bit. But it's just based on collecting the links. If you have been following me, what section is missing? No, we are missing use cases, apps built with something, with your SDK. So in general, we can put them in two places. We can put them under the features, or we can put them under the tutorials. Where would you put it? So if you put it after the tutorials, which is pretty logical because it shows the example of their how documentation can be used, then it's better to just place logos in the very first because the apps using it, it's confirmation that it's a working documentation, that's a good one, and it's like works for your marketing and promotion. If you are doing it after the feature, it's already a promotional part. Just make it very strong and clickable and make sure that the best are on the very top. So I will skip those 3 slides, hoping that someone will ask the question that I would like to answer. And we have the last layer left. So visual style, tone of voice, vibe, which is branding. That what I'm do for living and for joy for 15 years. And if we would like to talk about this now, that would be like 1 month's branding bootcamp, which we don't have time today. But because of this, if you want to dive a little bit deeper to this topic, so if you go to the website, then on the very, very top, almost on the very top, there is a recording from East Denver talk where I talk how your positioning can be used for website architecture and branding strategy. And also, this talk is not published. It's also East Denver, but that's a 45 minutes recording of video like minimum viable brand, where I actually talk about that very, very, very top layer that we didn't cover today. That was pretty quick. Thank you very much. And if you're around...
Thank you so much, Ira.
And if you're around for Regions Unite, I'm doing that workshop exactly about this talk, but it's 2 hours workshop.
Thank you, Ira. Does anyone have any questions in the audience here? We have a few minutes.
Hi there. Is it common to see more of a mobile-first approach nowadays, as opposed to starting with desktop? Because obviously it depends on the context of the product or the service. But nowadays, I assume a lot more people view websites through the mobile. So when it comes to the UX UI stage, do generally people start with mobile and then move on to desktop, or because commonly I see it start with desktop website first and then move on to the responsive side? In your experience, which do you start off with first?
It's usually based on the audience. So let's say developer, if you're a developer and just going to jump into the docs, you rarely would be jumping into the docs from your phone, right? You need to have it on the laptop. So the first would be desktop approach for this page. Like, what's the next destination? How they will get from the page you are currently here to the next. If the next destination is an application which is mobile, obviously the mobile first will be the first. But with this one, that's a pretty simple structure. So as you saw there, all the blocks is just 1 click, and Figma can make you a mobile layout right away without any work.
What's your take on choosing between maybe going for a more unique look for the docs or using something that's maybe more established in the ecosystem, for example, basing a template on Docusaurus and having like a more tried and tested user interface versus something that maybe pops out more as more unique to your brand?
So I will not answer this question because it relates to the doc organization itself, and there is, which is a product. So there are special designers who actually work with developers in the experience of development and rearranging this documentation. So I cannot answer this question because I'm on another loop. I'm bringing developers to your docs. And then if you're a developer, like if you're a designer, then it will be your job to keep them, I don't know.
Is there any further questions?
Sorry, and at what stage would you conduct, like, for example, A/B testing for the website or the service, and what kind of key points to look out for when doing A/B tests and such?
Well, for example, that where to put the resources, not apps created with the documentation, where to put, that would be a perfect moment for A/B testing. And yeah, so, and see what actually works better, because there's also like sales involved, and especially if you are targeting like bigger companies, so trying to use it in the bigger corporations. And there is like a software architect involved who is making decisions on all this stuff. That's a very important moment. And also like the learning journey, especially when you launch hackathons, which is a temporary part of the page itself. So one hackathon is out, it's just like section is out. That also might be a good A/B testing, but this will work for the next campaigns. Let's say you're launching hackathon right now, you don't know where to put this, but I wouldn't know where to put, for example, for very special audiences. Every developer, there's people behave in different ways, you know, even in the Web3 space, dev space, they behave in different ways. So launch A/B, and then you will have a data for the next hackathon. But then when putting it for the next hackathon, a new updated section, then you will know where to actually put it.
Hi, thanks for the call, for the talk. Do you have any favorite teams that you would use as reference? Any teams that come to mind that do this really well?
Who uses very well? I will hold myself from this, but we can chat about this because they're streaming, and I don't want to sound like very promotional for particular projects.
Okay, thanks.
But we can talk about this later. I have a list.
Is there any further questions? If not, thank you so much, Ira.
Thank you.
For the
Thank
great
you.
presentation, and please a round of applause.